Howdy, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Fun little episode here. As you can see by the thumbnail, the topic today, man walked with dinosaurs. This is from a 1922 Washington, D.C. newspaper. Quite a fun article. As I tried to do a little bit more random videos here, outside of the clips and anomalous America stuff, when I find time. And if you aren't aware, I've started a membership page, a new ad-free video once a week for a month. Definitely worth checking out if you want a little bit more from this channel. Yeah, let's jump right into the article here. Apologize ahead of time. I will sneeze probably. Been outside all morning gardening. Whew. Here's it's a whole page article. Mystery of the petrified shoe sole, 5 million years old. Then I'll just zoom in here and read the captions. How a fossil which strangely resembles part of a hand-sewn shoe has puzzled the scientists of America and opened the question whether ages ago a race of men conquered radium and moved away to another and better world. Could there be a better caption than that, guys? I love it. Radium moved away. And as you saw from the title, man walked with dinosaurs. Now, is this shoe sole really 5 million years old? I doubt it. Of course not. And I apologize for the poor resolution. This is the only example I could find of this. And the contrast is unfortunately very dark. But over here, you'll find this. This is the sole of the shoe found in the rock. Okay. Photograph of the mysterious fossil. Actual size. What appears to be threads used in sewing the welt of the shoe. Now, it's probably hard to see here, but all along where you see my cursor, there's two ridges with stitching. What appears to be the threads used in sewing the welt to the sole are plainly perceptible and can be observed and measured under the microscope. The indentation in the center appears to have been worn down by the heel bone. So, very advanced shoe construction, far more advanced than we'd attribute to the cavemen, let alone men that walked with dinosaurs. It's a narrative that's few and far between. Over here, it may be that the wearer in flight from pursuing dinosaurs trod in a bed of clinging clay. In drawing out the foot, the shoe, if it was actually a shoe, may have been wrenched loose from its thongs, leaving the sole behind. So here you see the foot, what they believe to be thongs, strapped, a sole with a kind of, strapped upper part being torn away and the sole being left in the clay. Again, I apologize. Allergies are quite horrible for me here. This is a image here. See the dinosaur with a horse and a palm tree. One of the monstrous dinosaurs whose bones were found in the same rock that held the shoe sole. Okay, really important. one of the monstrous dinosaurs whose bones were found in the same rock that held the shoe sole. Beside it is a modern horse for the purpose of comparison in size. Huge. Finding dinosaur bones and remnants of advanced human shoe construction. Now, if you've been following along my Anomalous America series, we've shown this in several states: Utah, Nevada. If you remember the Carson City, Nevada one where the man was hunting mammoths by the lakeside. Here's the middle one we're going to read next. Science's official reconstruction of the ancestor of man 100,000 years ago. A conception which must be entirely revised if it is proven that 5 million years ago there lived a race so civilized that they knew how to make shoes. Well, we've been blowing that whole narrative apart. Of course there was. And that wasn't 5 million years ago. Excuse me for 1 sec. My apologies again. Yeah, I got to record these in the small gaps of time I have throughout the day. And normally I wouldn't want to record when I'm having an allergy attack. But again, pardon my nasally voice and the breaks I may have to take to blow my nose. So, yeah, like we were covering here, right? Giant dinosaurs, giant lizards walking alongside man. Again, the official reconstruction of ancestors of man 100,000 years ago, a conception which must be entirely revised if it is proven that 5 million years ago there lived a race so civilized they knew how to make shoes. Now remember, there were, quote, dinosaurs. Now what a dinosaur is and the time frames alluded to them. That's the fallacy. Um, there were dinosaurs still alive all over America, all over Africa, all over Southern America. I mean, technically, dinosaurs still walk among us today. But yeah, so the time frame is much closer to our own. But yeah, this is a big article, a big read. So let's dive right in. By Dr. W. H. Ballou. Some time ago, while he was prospecting for fossils in Nevada, John T. Reed, a distinguished mining engineer and geologist, stopped suddenly and looked down in utter bewilderment and amazement at a rock near his feet. For there, a part of the rock itself was what seemed to be a human footprint. Closer inspection showed that it was not a mark of a naked foot, but was apparently a shoe sole which had been turned into stone. The fore part was missing, but there was the entire outline of at least two-thirds of it, and around this outline ran a well-defined sewn thread which had, it appeared, attached the welt to the sole. Further on was another line of sewing, and in the center where the foot would have rested, had the object been really a shoe sole, there was an indentation exactly such as would have been made by the bone of the heel rubbing upon and wearing down the material of which the sole had been made. Thus was found a fossil which is the foremost mystery of science today, for the rock in which it had been found is at least 5 million years old. And if the object was, as it seemed, a part of a shoe, It must have been lost in the mud from which the rocks were formed 5 million years ago. Now, again, remembering back through my Anomalous America Nevada episode, we talked about the footprints of giant 10-foot plus tall men, his giant dog companion, the women. He built a blind by the lakeside, hunting giant elephant, mammoths. They found tigers. They found all the animals you can imagine, footprints in and around this watering hole where he was hunting. Also, remember the article that Nevada was, quote, the Garden of Eden, some of the most ancient fossils, pictographs, hieroglyphics, a city underground, the Lehman Cave story. We also have the uh, cave of the giant red-headed men, right? Just so many connections here in the American Southwest. So yeah, if you haven't seen Anomalous America episode Nevada, I'd go back and watch it because it's really going to correlate a lot with what we're reading here. But this sets back the antiquity of man to a point at least 4 million years further than even the most daring scientists have ever placed it. Furthermore, as the fossils, assuming that it is a shoe, shows the greatest skill in making, it would appear that 5 million years ago, there were a race of mankind so far advanced in civilization and the arts that they knew how to make an entirely modern shoe. Well, they were making a lot of modern things back then, but it certainly wasn't 5 million years ago. When it is considered that science believes that not further back than 50,000 years ago, at the most, that the forefathers of mankind were hair covered, club carrying, vicious, and ferocious ape like creatures just emerging into the dawn of intelligence, it will be seen that the discovery of a well made, hand soled shoe 5 million years old is disconcerting indeed. Mr. Reed brought his find to New York and submitted it to a number of geologists and paleontologists for inspection, an explanation of the fossil, and of what the geologists thought of it. Mr. Reed says, on arrival in New York, I showed the fossil to Dr. James F. Kemp, geologist of Columbia University, Professors H. F. Osborne, W. D. Matthew, and E. O. Hovey of the American Museum of Natural History. All of these men reached the same conclusion. In effect, that it was the most remarkable natural imitation of an artificial object they had ever seen. These experts agreed, however, that the rock formation was Triassic, and manufacturers of shoes agree that originally the specimens was a hand-welted shoe. So he went to geologists, paleontologists, he even went to shoe experts, okay? Advanced shoe technology, design, right? And from the period of the Triassic. Now, these men were careful, the scientists, and said that it's an imitation of an artificial object. Well, that's ridiculous. And these newspaper articles show that the things they were finding would have all been labeled artificial uh, imitation. But we found far too many examples for that to be the case, especially in Nevada. Dr. W. D. Matthew wrote a brief report on the find, declaring that while all the semblances of the shoe were present, including the threads with which it had been sewn, it was only a remarkable imitation, a lusus of nature, or freak. I mean, come on, come on, come on, come on. We have footprints all over Nevada, big ones. This is a perfect example. Remember, they were building perfect duck decoys, better than we have today. They found, and these giant redheaded men, the uh, foundations of the Tesian race, from my Anomalous America to New Mexico episode, you'll remember Emperor Tigrinus. And if you haven't seen that short video, look it up. Emperor Tigrinus, the Atlantean king of New Mexico. Uh, Similar people, similar technology. I next got a hold of a micrographer and an analytical chemist of the Rockefeller Institute. Whoa. Who, on the outside, so as to not make it an institute matter, made photos and analysis of the specimen. So again, he did this on his own time. That way, the institute wouldn't have any, wouldn't have to save face. The analysis proved up any doubt of the shoe sole having been subjected to Triassic fossilization. Triassic rocks are variously estimated as having been formed from 5 million to 100 million years ago. On the other hand, human occupation of the Earth is fixed so far as there is fossil evidence at 1 million years. Owing to the remains of the Foxhall race having been unearthed in the Pleistocene rocks of the Tertiary era of the Cenozoic age at Ipswich, England, and in Nebraska. So, yeah, just wait until we get into our Nebraska um, episodes because the skeletal remains there will blow your mind. Now, then, could a human shoe, apologize me as we move up here, have existed in the Triassic times? A shoe, the product of as high a skill as is exhibited at Lynn or Brockton, Mass. Are archaeologists bound to the theory that man has existed on Earth only so long as they have fossil proof to show for it? And we know that's ridiculous. May not sometime fossils of a race or races yet be found vastly older than the Foxhall man? These are questions that must be worked out because here is the shoe sole, and it is a Triassic shoe sole. No one can place it a day younger than Triassic. Now, we've showed that through petrifaction and cataclysmic events that these time periods blend and are, in some cases, incredibly inaccurate. The micro photos bring out clearly the right-hand shoe of the path of the stitching. The twist of the thread is plainly visible. In other parts of the path, the rock has become abraded and the thread partially destroyed. At other section, the photograph shows the stitching as having been doubled for a space. In another section, there is a perfectly clear reproduction of the thread used in stitching the sole to the upper, and the spacing is clearly shown until it disappears beneath a portion of the sole that had by wear and compression, while yet in a soft and pliable condition, been forced over and thus covered up the balance of the line of the stitching front view. The microphoto magnifications are 20 times larger than the specimen itself, showing the minutest detail of thread twist and warp, proving conclusively that the shoe sole is not a resemblance, but strictly the handiwork of man. Even to the naked eye, the threads can be seen distinctly, and the definitively symmetrical outlines of the shoe sole. Inside this rim, and running parallel to it, is a line which appears to be regularly perforated as if for stitches. It may, and that at least two geologists whose names will develop someday have admitted that the shoe sole is valid, a genuine fossilization in Triassic rock. Here are some interesting details which were figured out from the micrographs taken at the Rockefeller Institute. The micrometer shows that the measurements of the thread used in the stitching of the shoe sole measures a slight amount less than the ordinary spool cotton thread of the 120 size. Here are the exact measurements of the thread and comparisons of commercial threads that I have purchased at local retail stores. The diameter of the thread, as shown on micrograph, LH2 1.5 is 0.051425 of an inch. Again, I apologize. Taking little breaks to blow my nose. Thank you so much for your patience. Again, I would prefer to record this at a different time, but time is precious and I have a little of it. So here we are. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope you're enjoying this so far. Number 120 spool cotton that I have purchased locally measures 0.005423 of an inch. I'm advised by shoemakers that no such fine thread as this has ever been used in the making of the modern shoe in any factories with respect to the thread used in sewing soles to the uppers. This suggests that there must have been much more strength to the thread than any thread that is now known to man. It also suggests that the needle that was used in stitching must have been made of a material that was of fine workmanship, quite as good, if not better, than anything now in use in modern shoemaking. Once again, why I love stuff like this is, we take for granted things like shoemaking and all the different materials and all the different manufacturing that goes into making all the different things required to assemble the shoe and the products therein. So you can only imagine you take something like this to a shoemaker who knows the intricacies of shoemaking, and there are many. This would be absolutely mind blowing. And you mentioned a shoe sole. I'm gonna stumble with that word because I can't breathe out of my nose right now. Shoe sole. You know, it sounds silly, and no one's gonna, it's gonna be overlooked. But this is an incredibly remarkable thing. One very remarkable feature that gives the shoe sole great age is the presence of some sulfide of mercury crystals within the intricacies of the holes of the stitching and other indentations of a portion of the sole. This mineral substance owes its origin to dikes that were intruding from great depths in the Tertiary age. The minerals being subsequently carried in solution, perhaps cold water solutions, for the rock in which the fossil is embedded shows no signs of the action of heated waters. For a mile or more through the cracks and crevices of limestone rocks of the Triassic age. Thus we have proof of the antiquity of the shoe sole, in so much as it was in place in the rocks, and it was embedded prior to the mineral dep- depositions that came as a result of the Tertiary volcanic activity. The limestone in which this was found is of Triassic age and determined by geologists connected with the survey of the 40th parallel under the supervision of Clarence King for the United States government. The time when the object, whatever it is, started on the career of fossilization was in the very heart of the age of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs were large, monstrous reptilian creatures which science supposed have vanished millions of years before man, as such, was born on the planet. In the same stone in which the sole print was found are the bones of some of these creatures. Again, let me reiterate. In the same stone in which some of the sole print was found are the bones of some of these creatures. It was the age when ears began to appear and proper openings in the skulls for two eyes instead of three, for a first type of nose and a more reasonable mouth. There were fishes galore and whopping big sharks. The ichthyosaur was in his glory, and he was finally joined by the plesiosaur. On land were dinosaurs which walked on hind legs and tail, tripod fashion, and left the tracks of their feet, which are now so numerously found fossilized in the Connecticut Valley. It is just possible that toothed birds arose in this era, although we have the fossils so far of only the Ar- Archaeopteryx. Gonna mutilate that, I apologize. From the Jurassic or next succeeding era after the Triassic. Obviously, man could have lived in the Triassic if other forms of life could, but he would scarcely have been shod with shoes from Lynn and Brockton. A study of the photographs convinces one that if the fossil is in fact footgear, Mr. Reed's find is an Indian moccasin, beautifully sewn by native of Squaw. Now, we've again shown that is ridiculous, and that we're dealing with succeeding races built on other races, and more often than not, technology keeps getting more advanced. That man was living in the megafauna age alongside giant trees, giant vegetables, giant fruit, and giant creatures. And that man was at war with giant creatures, more so than he was at war with his fellow man. We have now ample evidence that Indians have been roaming all America for 1 to 2 million years. Now, Indian is a slippery slope of a word, as we've been showing. We can do still more to elevate Mr. Reed's fossil shoe into the possibilities. It is a perfectly good fossil, whatever it represents. His strongest proponents would be Professor Sodley, Jolly, and Strutt of the University of Oxford. They argue for the existence of mankind for millions of years and declare that super races of men once existed who learned how to disintegrate or transmute radium into unlimited power by which they departed from Earth to some sphere in space where conditions were more favorable for human life. Let me read that again. His strongest proponents would be Professor Soddy, Jolly, and Strutt of the University of Oxford. They argue for the existence of mankind for millions of years and declare that super races of men once existed who learned how to disintegrate or transmute radium into unlimited power by which they departed from Earth to some sphere in space where conditions were more favorable for human life. In the Interpretation of Radium by Frederick Soddy, University of Oxford, in Chapter 11 on radioactivity and the evolution of the world, he states, here we go. Some of the old myths and legends about matter and men, for which formerly were without origin, now appear different in the light of the accumulated knowledge. Some of them are as old as the race itself. What if this point of view that now suggested itself is true concerning the traditions and superstitions that have been handed down to us from the prehistoric times? Can we not read in them some justification for the belief that some former race of men attained not only to the knowledge we have so recently won, but also to the power through radium which is not yet ours? Science has reconstructed the story of the past as one of continuous ascent of man to the present day level of his power. In face of the circumstantial evidence existing of this steady upward progress of the race, the traditional view of the fall of man from a former higher state has come to be more and more difficult to understand. From our new standpoint, the 2 points of view are by no means so irreconcilable as they appear. Irreconcilable, my apologies. If we can judge from what our engineers accomplish with their comparatively restricted supplies of energy, a former race which could transmute matter would have little need to earn its bread by the sweat of its brow. Such a radium conquering race could transform a desert into a continent, thaw the frozen poles, and make the whole world one smiling Garden of Eden. Possibility they could explore the outer realms of space, immigrating to more favorable worlds, as the superfluous today immigrate to more favorable continents. Such mastery of power would come from a knowledge of the full utility of radium. The legend of the fall of man, possibly, may be all that has survived of such a time before. For some unknown reason, the whole world has plunged back again under the undisputed sway of nature, to begin once more its toilsome journey through the ages. The discovery of radium and increasing discoveries of its uses have opened an entirely new prospect for man of vast possibilities. The field of work has opened out in a number of directions previously unsuspected. The problem of transmutation and the liberation of atomic energy to carry on the labor of the world is no longer surrounded with mystery and ignorance, but is daily being reduced to a form capable of exact quantitative reasoning. We are advancing along the only road likely to bring success, and at a rate which makes it probable that one day we'll see its achievement. As suddenly and unexpectedly as the discovery of radioactivity itself, at any moment, some fortunate one might find the clue and follow it up. So would be diverted into the channels of human consciousness and purpose the full primary fountain of natural energy at its source. If Professor Sadi's radium conquering super race existed millions of years ago and knew enough to transmute energy from radium, they also knew enough to make shoes for themselves as good, at least, as we have today. Perhaps a Superman wearing a near modern shoe stepped on the soft part of a Triassic rock in Nevada and left the imprint which Mr. Reed now exposes to a critical scientific audience. The foot, if it was a foot, that was within the shoe or moccasin was much smaller than the average foot of today. And if it was a shoe and a human being wore it, then we can conjecture how it came to be lost. It was the age of the dinosaurs. It may be that the wearer traveling over the swampy land was suddenly pursued by some of these gigantic, grotesque creatures. In his or her flight, the foot stuck in a bed of clinging clay. In extracting it, the thongs which bound the welt and the sole to the foot may have been wrenched loose, leaving the sole behind. And there it lay until soon after it was covered by some convulsion of nature, and for thousands upon thousands of years the ordinary leather or dinosaur hide was slowly turned into rock. And there, hundreds of thousands of years later, another convulsion of nature thrust it up to the light again, to be found by Engineer Reed, and to give science the most puzzling nut it has had to crack for many a generation. So, yeah, amazing. I hope you enjoyed that. And thanks for sticking with me through those breaks. I apologize for my voice and the runny nose. But yeah, so man, I and if you've been following my work or you're new to my work, um, I have I have a radium series that I am exploring radium, its background, its uses, its history, its discovery, so on and so forth. Nevada plays a very important role in that. And check out those episodes. I'll have them in the description. Um, I'll also have my Nevada anomalous episode um, linked in the description. So you can check that out and see much more evidence pertaining to this article and corroborative evidence that they were finding in the 1800s and early 1900s of America. So this will be part 3 of a radium series, part 1 of a Man Walks with Dinosaur series. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And check out check out the description for more information if you're interested. And thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.